Hello, everyone. Welcome to my webinar. I'm very excited to talk about one of the most common issues that I see in practice, and probably one of the most dangerous ones for your long term health. So, let's dive into it. And the issue we're going to talk about today is constipation. So, before we talk about constipation, let's talk about a principle of your body being able to heal itself. Our bodies are an incredible biological machine. I do see what could be miraculous healings almost every day in my practice. But there are certain things that need to be in place for your body to be able to repair itself. Basically, first of all, your body needs certain nutrients. Those nutrients are vitamins, minerals, essential sugars, amino acids, water, fats, in order to manufacture its own proteins and repair its immune system, its digestive system, its muscles. First of all, you need to be able to take those nutrients in. You can't make a lot of those nutrients. Not only you have to take them in, you also have to be able to metabolize them and then absorb them. That's number one requirement. Number two requirement for your body to heal itself is going to be able to get rid of waste. Waste is generated in the body all the time because cells reproduce, and the cells that are done with their lifespan, they have to die and they have to be taken out of the body. So, how does the waste get taken out? It gets taken out through your urine, sweat, breath, and of course, one of the most important pathways is through feces. And that's the route that I see impaired in a lot of people. So, first of all, we're going to talk about normal bowel habits. Normal would be 1 to 3 bowel movements every day, with one time going to the bathroom would be an absolute minimum. Anything less, so if you skip a day and you go to the bathroom every other day, you are being auto intoxicated and you're reabsorbing your toxins that your body is supposed to be getting rid of. The bowel movements should usually be brown. They should be nicely formed, not loose, not overly hard, formed generally like a sausage and very easy to pass. Meaning that you go to the bathroom, you sit down, you pass your bowel movement, you don't sit there for 20 minutes. And also, your feces should not stick to the toilet bowl. It should kind of sink, it should not float, and you should have no visible food particles. And also, it should have very little smell. You should not be straining. You shouldn't be having any cramping or pain with your bowel movements. So, why is that so important? First of all, if you do not eliminate your waste, then you have buildup of toxicity and poisonous gases. And they build up because of stagnation and also unfriendly bacteria. This toxicity can easily enter your bloodstream because your large intestine is responsible for reabsorption of water and certain substances from your feces. That can easily cause inflammation in the body and irritate the liver. I don't think I've ever seen anyone who is constipated and does not have chronic inflammation issues. Also, if you're alternating between constipation and diarrhea, that might potentially means that you have some very unfriendly organisms living in your small and large intestines. And also constipation is very closely linked to hormonal problems and or thyroid problems. Um, so why is constipation such a bad thing to have? First of all, long-term constipation can easily lead to things like cancer or immune dysfunction. And also, just this environment in the large intestine can be a breeding ground for other really serious health issues. There was a wonderful quote by Dr. Anthony Bassler, he's a gastroenterologist, and he said that every physician should realize that the intestinal poisons are the most important primary and contributing cause of many disorders and the diseases of the human body. So, before we jump into it, let's talk about what actually is stool. A lot of people think, well, it's just food. And then the surprise is if you take a day fasting or if you take a break from food, then theoretically people think, well, I shouldn't have a bowel movement. Or if you eat less than normal, a lot of times you'll skip a day. But the truth is that bowel movements is not just the processed waste from your food. Mostly, what it is stuff that your body is trying to get rid of. So cells that have been broken down, your steroid sex hormones, a lot of chemicals that you're daily exposed to, and you're exposed to them through the air, through the water, and then any kind of other toxic substances that are byproducts of your body's cellular metabolism. To give you an analogy, think about what would happen if sewage in your city or your town got blocked up, or if garbage men stopped collecting trash every day. So, same thing happens in the body. Transit time. Transit time refers to the concept of when you put the food in your mouth and when the food or leftovers actually leave your body. Ideally, it should be about 24 hours. How can you figure out how long your transit time is? And I've seen people with transit time as short as 6 hours, which is way too fast because you do not have time to digest and absorb your food. And then some people, it can take up to 3 days. That's a really sluggish metabolism. How you figure yours out is very easy. You pretty much just eat some corn, whole corn, or you can have some beets, and then you pretty much pay attention to what your feces looks like and wait and see when you see either undigested corn kernels or red color in your stool. And then if it's longer than 24 hours or if it's really short, then you need to pay attention to the rest of your webinar. Here we're going to be talking more about constipation, but of course we can always touch up on diarrhea later. So the biggest things that contribute to constipation. Number one, chronic dehydration. If you do not have enough water in your body, your large intestine will continually dehydrate your feces in order to conserve and recycle as much water as possible because it's one of its functions. So, the first thing you need to do, you have to make absolutely sure you get enough water every day. Ideally, on average, you should be shooting for about 80 ounces of pure, clean, and filtered water daily. Please hear me on this. Do not drink tap water unless your life is in danger and you have no other choice. Tap water contains a lot of toxins that can make your health significantly worse. And that includes a lot of runoff, pesticides, insecticides, chlorine, residual amounts of drugs that don't get filtered out. So, none of that is good for you. So, make sure you invest in a good quality filter. Um, Going back to how much water to drink, it depends on a lot of other factors. So 80 ounces is on average. If you live in a very dry climate, like I do, in places like Utah or Colorado, for example, you really have to drink a lot more. If you're in a very humid climate, like California, Florida, of course, you're not going to need that much water because your body doesn't lose it as easily. Your weight should also come into account here, activity level, also how much you talk. If you do not talk very much, then you lose less water. If you talk for a living, you need to hydrate better because, like I said, you lose a lot of water when you speak. Another great habit to get into, one of the most important ones, the simplest, the cheapest one, is to start your day with drinking 2 glasses of warm water. If you want to, you can add lemon to it as well. As soon as you get up, heat up some water and drink it slowly. So, preferably, you should shoot for about 16 to 24 ounces a day. Once you do this, wait a while, have your breakfast, and then have your coffee. If you skip breakfast and you're just having coffee, that's all right too, although not great for your stomach. However, if your stomach can allow it, that's fine. But you have to make sure you start with water. Nighttime is one of the most dehydrating times of the day. And when you start up, in order to jumpstart your digestive system, drinking hot water helps you relax bile ducts and smooth muscle of your intestines. So not only it's great to help you with constipation and your bowel movements, it's also great to help you relieve bile flow from your liver and gallbladder. Bile itself is very antimicrobial. So if your bile flows freely through your intestines, you're also going to have a really nice antimicrobial effect. While we're on the subject of water, you also should be aware that depending on your mineral intake and depending on your diet, you might need to take some electrolytes. I do see some people drink a lot of water, upwards of 100 to 150 ounces a day, without realizing that when you drink water, water flushes a lot of minerals out of the body. When you lose minerals, and it's hard to get enough minerals just from the diet, you cannot hold on to water. So you drink water and pee it out, drink it and pee it out. So, in order for you to hold on to water, you have to make sure you have plenty of minerals in the body. If you notice that that's the case with you, where you drink and you pee, drink and you pee, try getting some good quality electrolytes. I like Electrolyte Forte by Biotics Research. It's a very clean formula. Or at the very least, you can add a pinch of Celtic sea salt to the water that you drink, provided you don't have any issues with blood pressure. Um, and then when you do drink your water, the rest of it throughout the day, ideally you should be drinking most of it away from your meals. And then also try to finish drinking before 6 to 7 p.m. Otherwise, you'll be up going to the bathroom all night long, and that will affect quality of your sleep. The second issue we need to discuss as far as dehydration, lack of fiber. Fiber bulks up the stool, and it's much easier to eliminate when you have plenty of fiber. You can eat vegetables and you should be eating vegetables. However, it's not possible for some people because, believe it or not, there's a group of people that can be very sensitive to either oxalates or lectins or other substances in vegetables. So, if vegetables is not an option for you, you're going to have to look at other sources of fiber. You can use flax seeds, you can use chia seeds, soak them overnight and make them into the pudding, or you can also get a higher quality fiber supplement. And if you do take fiber supplements, and those can be psyllium, pectins, absolutely make sure you drink a lot of water, because if you just take fiber pills and you do not drink water, you can end up in the emergency room uh, because it can obstruct your intestines. So make sure, try those two things first. Number one, hydrate. Number two, eat plenty of fiber. Now we're moving on to liver and bile health. This is a very interesting topic, and that's the one that I don't see talked about much. Bile is a liquid. Your liver, when it's healthy, is supposed to make 1.5 to 2 quarts of bile every single day. So the liver manufactures it, then the bile goes to the gallbladder, and the gallbladder is little tiny organ under your right rib cage that its job is to concentrate the bile. And usually it concentrates bile to about 10-15 times. And every time that your food leaves your stomach and hits the top of your small intestine, your gallbladder is supposed to contract, squirt a bunch of that concentrated bile out. And with that bile, you have, number one, lubrication of your intestines. So many cases of constipation, much suffering, is because people cannot lubricate their intestine. Their feces is too dry, and it's very easy, very difficult for your intestines to move it along. Um, Number two job that bile has, it helps you absorb fat soluble nutrients. So if you do not have good bile flow, even if you were to take supplements, for example, like omega 3s or fat soluble vitamins, you can't absorb them because water and fat do not mix. So as soon as you take them, but if you don't have enough bile flow to emulsify those supplements, they're just going to go right through you. So, why would you not make enough bile? And here we come at a very interesting problem. One of the most important ingredients in order for you to make the bile is taurine. What is taurine? Taurine is an amino acid that is so important that almost all protein, especially animal protein, will have a lot of taurine. It is not just essential for bile production, it is also super important for your nervous system because it's a common neurotransmitter. So, most people are not vegan or vegetarian. You'd say, well, I'm eating meat. I should be getting enough taurine. You should be. The problem is that taurine is a sulfur containing amino acid, which means that if you cook it, it will get destroyed. So if you're eating cooked meat, you cannot get enough taurine. Would I recommend eating raw meat? Absolutely not. It's just not safe anymore. But that puts us in a position where we're becoming dependent on amino acid taurine as a supplement. It's honestly one of the cheapest, one of the most amazing supplements out there. So taurine is number one. Average dose is about 1,000 milligrams. It is so safe that I've even had kids take it. It's completely safe. There is no side effects on it because it is an amino acid. The second supplement to look at is something called phosphorylcholine, sometimes sold as lecithin. Phosphorylcholine is a phospholipid that helps you rebuild your liver. So it's one of the best nutrients for the liver. We also use a supplement called cod liver oil and wheat germ oil. Those are barriers of very important fatty acids that lower inflammation in the body, and they also help you repair the mucous membranes of all of your organs, and they're extremely wonderful for the cellular membranes. The combination of those four nutrients are probably one of the best things that you can do for your health. I have seen probably 60 to 70% of constipation cases resolved just by making sure people are hydrated and improving their bile flow. Now, if you are missing your gallbladder, and that unfortunately is very common, and you are suffering from constipation or diarrhea, you have to make sure you take a supplement containing bile salts. I recommend using Beta Plus. It's also can be found on my full script or any supplement that actually has bile salts. Because once you lose the gallbladder, it's not going to grow back. And basically, what that means is you do not have a storage facility for bile. So when you eat fats, you can't process them at all. So they're just going to go right through you, also in the process, upsetting your digestion. So, and that's something you're going to be needing to take for the rest of your life because, unfortunately, like I said, this gallbladder is not going to grow back. Okay, on to number four, and that is magnesium deficiency. When we talk about magnesium, most people are magnesium deficient because it's very difficult to get enough magnesium from the diet. There are quite a few salts, and for general magnesium, systemic magnesium replenishment, you want to look at forms such as magnesium glycinate, magnesium malate. Here we are talking specifically to help you with constipation. And that's where you want to look at two very specific forms. One is called magnesium citrate and one's called magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is probably my least favorite one, but you can use it very effectively for cases of extreme constipation. The difference of these salts from the other ones is that they do not get absorbed by your body. So what they do is when you take them, they'll pretty much will go right through you. Citrate is probably the gentlest one. So if your constipation isn't terrible or you want to start with something lighter, start with citrate. We can start with 2 to 400 milligrams before you go to bed, and then you need to adjust the dose based on how much you need to take to produce a nice, easy bowel movement in the morning. A little bit, let's talk about peristalsis. Peristalsis is how your intestines move the food through your digestive tract from the moment it enters your stomach and until the time it's processed and leaves you. Some people have a huge problem with peristalsis, and there's a lot of reasons for it. We don't really have time to go into most of them. However, one of the things that surprisingly is important is iron. Iron is a mineral that a lot of people are deficient in, especially menstruating women. So, if you're a woman, you really should always ask your medical doctors to check your ferritin. Most of the blood tests that I see that are being run usually look at iron or hemoglobin and hematocrit. Those are not adequate to determine your iron status. Please always insist that it's ferritin that's being checked. There's also other options. You can just go directly to the lab and ask them to check your ferritin. But ferritin is one of those things that is vital for your health to know. Normal dose, you should be between 60 and 90. That's kind of an ideal range over there. Funny thing is, over the counter iron supplements actually cause constipation. So I never recommend you take those. If your ferritin is low and you have symptoms of anemia, you need to be looking for food based iron supplements. There's quite a few available on FullScript, or if you look in the stores or you look online, you look for food based ones. Physical movement, self explanatory. Ideally, of course, we should all be walking 10,000 steps a day. Very few people actually can get that in. As much movement and you get as you can, you should be getting. I always recommend for a week or so, write down how much movement are you actually getting. Maybe wear a watch or pay attention to your phone to get an idea of how many steps you're actually taking. There's also very interesting specific yoga poses and exercises that are very helpful for constipation. You can find those online. So, if you do all of those things, you're taking your fiber, you're drinking water, you eliminate, you help your bile flow, you start walking, and you're still having problems with constipation, you need to look at food allergies. Food allergies are unfortunately a very widespread problem. The biggest food groups that are allergens that I see in practice are number one, wheat and gluten, especially genetically modified wheat. The second one is dairy, third, sugar, and then eggs, soy, and corn. Pretty much ideally, again, if your constipation is bad, eliminate all of those and try to stick to meat, vegetables, maybe some fruit for about a week. If you see a big difference, then start introducing those foods back one at a time, but don't introduce more than one food every 3 days. And then you will have a really good understanding and clarity which specific food you might be reacting to. The reason why you do not want to introduce more than one food every 3 days is because sometimes it takes that long for your body to react. So let's say you have a piece of bread and some pasta today, 3 days, you want to wait. For some people, it actually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for a complete allergen elimination to see results. So, and plus, you're just going to feel better and you'll feel lighter. So, periodic detoxification diets or detoxification way of eating is really good for you. Um, the other contributor, pretty major contributor to digestive problems, specifically constipation or diarrhea for that matter, especially if you also have bloating and lots of gas, usually we find that there's a significant yeast or candida or parasitic overgrowth. So, with those ones, probiotics can be very helpful. However, usually I find the best results with specific herbs and supplements that are designed to help with getting rid of yeast. The ones I use the most and the ones that are probably the safest and the easiest for people to tolerate are something called ADP, which is emulsified oregano oil. It's a supplement by Biotics Research. And Candibacan BR, that's a supplement by Metagenics. Um, People mostly really like taking those together, we see the quickest results. How to take them and how much to take them will be included in the description of the webinar. And all of the supplements you can also find on FullScript. One more problem we want to touch on, and that is low hydrochloric acid. So what is hydrochloric acid? Hydrochloric acid is type of acid that your stomach produces. Its job is to help you get the most out of proteins that you eat. I have to say that low hydrochloric acid is epidemic in people. And what's interesting, in some cases, heartburn and acid reflux can actually be a sign of low hydrochloric acid. It's hard to, without proper testing, to differentiate just based on the symptom, but most people that are susceptible to low hydrochloric acid are older people. Used to be over people over 60, 65. Nowadays, I'm seeing it more and more, sometimes in people in their 40s, because one of the leading contributors to low hydrochloric acid is stress. And stress has been extremely high the last few years, so it really does affect people's stomachs. There's other causes for it. One is H. pylori infection. There's also zinc and vitamin B deficiencies. So there's a lot of reasons why you might be deficient in hydrochloric acid. We're going to do a separate webinar on those because it is such a widespread problem, and there are certain things you need to know because it's not that difficult to correct it. But for the time being, if you suspect this might be an issue for you, you can try having a little bit of apple cider vinegar. What you do, you have different ways you can do it. One, you can take equal parts of apple cider vinegar, water, and honey and mix those really well, and then have this mixture sitting on your counter and sip on about 1 teaspoon of that mixture with each meal you eat. And notice if your digestion improves. If you don't want to bother with honey, you can also take just plain teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, mix it in about 2 ounces of water, and then sip this mixture with your meal. If that you find that helps you and that becomes too cumbersome, you potentially can be looking at hydrochloric acid supplements. HCl plus is the one I used very frequently, also is found on FullScript. However, if you find that your acidity or acid reflux or heartburn gets worse with apple cider vinegar, then that most likely means you have type of gastritis or irritation in the stomach, and you definitely should not go towards hydrochloric acid supplements. Um, Another important thing that quite a few people don't know about is position for your elimination. Historically, when people used to go to the bathroom, the toilets did not exist. And a normal biologically, physiologically correct position for elimination is squatting. If you look at this picture on the left, you will notice that um, when you're in a squatting position, look how much higher your knees are than your hips. When you're in this position, your large intestine actually changes its shape, making it extremely easy for you to eliminate. These days, we have toilets, and some of the toilets are extremely high. So when you're trying to eliminate, you're basically pooping against gravity. First of all, it's because it's much more difficult. Secondly, it's actually not that good for your rectal area because it can cause strains, fissures, hemorrhoids, and so on and so forth. This is why squatty potty is so important, especially if you have young children or you're not very tall. So you can use a squatty potty. If you don't want to bother a squatty potty, honestly, you can just buy like a plastic container, turn it upside down, and use that. Find a height that is convenient to you. Uh, Complete squatting, of course, is the best position, but that's not very practical in our Western world. So find something to make sure that your knees are above your hips when you're trying to poop. So that is kind of a overall overview of the most common problems I see with constipation. Please send me questions. I would love to know what you guys would like to hear about, how I can help you. Yeah, and if you leave me your questions, I will be making webinar. For now, thank you so much for joining me. And then stay tuned for our next webinar that's going to come out on August 4th. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.